Hello viewers, today's video is a making of video demonstrating how I make model aircraft out of paper and cardboard. And because some of you are interested in how I make my models, so I try to record and put together this video. But I have to say it's not perfect, but hopefully I can get the message across. Today's video is featuring this lovely 1 to 500 scale CRJ-900 in SAS livery. The first step of making an aircraft model, and indeed any model, is to do research. This note is summarizing the whole model that I'm making. I start with making the fuselage of the aircraft. The main fuselage I use cardboard with about like half a millimeter thick, but depends on the model of aircraft and the scale, you may want to use a different material. And then I draw lines on it in which the window sits. This is where all the windows and doors and the liveries are all orientated around it, so it's very important to get it right. Always double check and cross-reference when you do this. I use a 0.05 ink pen to draw out the windows and emergency exits, etc. Obviously, it's important to draw the windows at a consistent spacing and a consistent size. This is a relatively simple design. There's not much of a complicated graphics livery attached to it. If that's the case, you may want to draw your windows lighter or darker. And oftentimes it takes a couple tries to get the desired outcome. So as you can probably tell from the video, I tried a couple times. And this is the one I pick eventually. And then the next step is to form the round fuselage. Basically just roll it across, but be careful not to scratch it. It's often a good idea to use tools like ruler or something round to help. And to glue it, I usually use U-hook glue and then use tape to tape across it. I found the U-hook glue and the tape works very well together. Following the main fuselage is the rear fuselage. For most planes, it is cone shape. That makes it slightly harder to make because it's hard to get the shape and the curvature right. What I will usually do is start from a piece of card of the same width of the main fuselage, and then trim off bit by bit to make it more like a setter shape, and always test it against the main fuselage to make sure the shape is just right. It is a process of trial and error and just testing to get the perfect results. When attaching large components such as vertical stabilizers, horizontal stabilizers, wings, etc., I usually make a small cut on the place where the component attach so that it kind of slots into place. That makes a strong connection between the components. When drawing graphics on the front or rear fuselage, you have to be very careful because the shape is bent in more than one direction, so a straight line may not be a straight line when assembled. When doing coloring, remember to color across the thickness of the cardboard. That will make the joints less obvious when assembled. Before gluing, you may want to fine-tune the cutting of the joints to ensure a seamless joint. When joining pieces together, again I will use the combination of U-hook glue and tape. Do not use excessive glues to avoid glue marks. Make sure the alignments are all right before the glue are cured. When making the vertical stabilizers, the dimension is slightly altered, especially on the top, so that it has room for the horizontal stabilizer to slide into place, and also to ensure the structural strength of the component. When making these cuts, it is important to make the dimension just right so the component fits together perfectly. For example, in this tail fin, it would be the thickness of 2 pieces of cardboard and not more than that. I often found white paint quite hard to paint, especially some finer graphics in white is hard to do in my opinion. The horizontal stabilizer is relatively easy because you can basically just copy from the drawings you got. However, sometimes if it's connected to the fuselage directly, it will be slightly more complicated. And also there's a risk of conflicting details for the attachment points of the vertical stabilizer and the horizontal stabilizer in those cases. Engine pylons are quite tricky to make because of the small size, complicated shape, and the strength required for the structural behavior. Use a piece of thick and strong cardboard and a very sharp blade to cut that. And this is the completed result. Moving on onto the engines, they are quite small although their shape is relatively straightforward. Ideally, a relatively thin piece of card is to be used because the diameter of the engine is very small and the card has to be bent that much to make this shape. In this case, a slot has to be cut on the engine cowlings to allow that to clamp onto the engine pylons. For these small parts with multiple components, it is a good idea to test it and fine-tune it before gluing all those components together. The fan blade, or this black piece of card in front of the engine, is made by a punch. This is the punch designed for leather work and I found it very useful. It is a good idea to complete everything on the rear of the aircraft first, because of weight and balance. This is to figure out whether the plane is in a tail-heavy position that will have a tail strike, instead of sitting on its 3 landing gears. It is not a huge issue in this jet because of the rear position of the wings. If it is tail-heavy, extra weights are needed to put inside the front fuselage before the nose is capped on. In the rear part of the engine is often a trapezium shape or a cone shape for the exhaust and the nozzle. Depends on the engine models and the detail you want to get into. You can have one or multiple cones behind the engine. Use gray card shaped as kind of a setter and bend it into a cone shape to form the engine exhaust. In this case, the nose is a relatively simple and straightforward shape. It is like a cone, but in other cases it could be more complicated and may require more than one piece of cardboard to form the shape. Because the nose is such an important part of the aesthetics of an aircraft, it is a good idea to take time and make sure the nose looks nice. Again, multiple attempts were made, one based on and improved upon the last one, getting closer to the real aircraft. After getting the shape right, next step is to draw all the windows and windscreen liveries and all sorts of things. One of the challenges is it is hard to draw a straight line due to the curvature of the nose. Another difficulties come with the curved shape of the nose is that if you design it only in one angle, then it may look good at that angle. But then if you change your point of view, it may look nothing like the real aircraft. So it has to be designed very carefully and compromise may have to be made. The final chosen design was then carefully attached to the fuselage. For the wings, the first step is to Google the wingspan of an aircraft, and that is easy enough. And with a piece of card that is exactly the wingspan of the aircraft, the next step will be cutting it into shape with help from different drawings and resources that I gathered. With the basic templates of the wings, the next step is to add the wingtips and the tenon attachment points, which is crucial in attaching the wings onto the aircraft itself. To create the correct thickness across the section of the wing, some smaller cardboard inserts of different shape were made to make sure the wings are at the correct thickness at the correct location. This also makes the wings strong and stable. On the surface of the wings templates, lines like the flaps, leading edge, etc. were drawn on the wings. And then I used the cutter to lightly engrave all those lines onto the wing surface. A gray watercolor pen was used to slightly brush onto the wing surface, and the color on the engraved surface were darkened and showed clearly. This helped to create a wonderful texture on the wing. With that ready, the wingtips and the registration numbers etc. are then painted onto the wings. It should be remembered that the outer facing wingtips is on the bottom side of the wings. After all the components are ready, they could be glued together. Press hard with your fingers to ensure the leading edge and trailing edge of the wings are in the correct shape. A silvery paint was applied on the leading edge of the wings to make it more realistic. For bent wingtips, its shape should be formed when the wings components are glued together. Parts of the tenon on the roots of the wing are trimmed off to make sure the wings are sit under the belly properly, as shown in the bottom right diagram. A wing box is used, joining the fuselage and the wings together. The template of the wing box is quite complicated in order to form a transition from the round fuselage to the relatively square wing box and connecting the woods of the wings. The way to achieve this is that the wing box itself is like an open box or open channel, and small cuts, sometimes curvy, are used to trim off bits of the corners, and also at the front and rear end of the box. And with those cuts, it gives room for the wing box to curve up to meet the fuselage perfectly. Sometimes in place of this large singular central wing box, one alternative is to split it in half to two smaller wing box or kind of fairing, which could be seen in aircraft such as A300 and the Boeing 767, etc. When the parts are ready, use lots of glues to make sure the wings, wing box, and the fuselage are connected securely. Also, it's important to make sure the wings and the wing box are aligned on the center line of the aircraft. After that, gently push and morph the wing box so that the different tips of the wing box and also the fuselage are joined together seamlessly. And last but not least, it's crucial that the wings are in the level, symmetrical position when the glues are dry. And the best way to achieve that is to put it in a kind of a makeshift stand with some pressure applied to it. For the cannons under the wings or the flap track fairings, they have to be glued very firmly so that it does not peel away easily. In this CRJ aircraft, it is represented only by a strip of paper. And here comes the CRJ in flight mode. And for the landing gear, I don't know why I chose this camera angle, but I will enlarge the diagram so you can get a sense of what's going on. I usually use lever punch to create a nice round circular piece of cut for the wheels. However, there's no suitable dimensions for the landing gear of this CRJ, therefore I cut it by hand. And this is how I make my SAS CRJ-900 aircraft in 1:500 scale. It has not been easy putting together these videos with almost 7 hours of footage and shots from all different weird angles. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. So thank you for watching, and if you have any question, welcome to DM me on Instagram. My Instagram is little_model_airport. Thank you.